The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. It's time for the Guillotine Grapevine, a podcast for the land of 10,000 wrestlers. 10,000 wrestlers. Now, here's your host, award-winning wrestling broadcast journalist, Jason Bryant.
Now up on the Guillotine Grapevine. Been a while since we did a show. The last update was from the NCAAs, and those have come and gone. Now we have another former Gopher great actually in studio here in wonderful New Brighton, where if you want to know the temperature, just check my Twitter every morning at 9:30. Brandon Paulson, Olympic silver medalist, going into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in Stillwater this coming weekend. We'll talk about that on the Hall of Fame Legends show. But here to give us an update on Minnesota wrestling, PINnacle, all things international styles here this summer. Welcome to the studio. You're the third guest ever here.
Well, I feel so honored to just be the third guest. This place is amazing. I hope it turns out well and the sound is good in here, because it's a very expensive looking studio. You must be making millions.
It's wrestling. Nobody makes millions. Even successful people like yourself know this to be true. Although, like I said, we've got Greco on the wall here.
I see that. Awesome. Greco-Roman World Champions 2007 with Brad Beering. A lot of my former teammates. Actually, I wrestled till 04, so a lot of these guys were my former teammates and guys I trained with quite a bit, so that's awesome.
He signed it, too.
I know.
Yeah, got the silver pen. That was an interesting story, because I was living in Pennsylvania at that time, and when I went down to announce that dual meet at American University, I drove back to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, fell asleep on the couch, woke up with my toilet basically overflowing into my downstairs.
Oh, my gosh.
The joys of home ownership. I will always remember the story behind, one, it took me 5 hours to get to D.C., which was a 2-hour trip, and then coming home and then just having $5,000 worth of repairs in my first house that I'd lived in for 3 months.
Yes.
You ever seen The Money Pit?
Yes. Yeah.
This is exactly what I thought I inherited. Now, those of you under the age of 35 will not understand the Money Pit reference. However, probably one of the greater movies of the 80s.
Yes, it was funny.
It was a great one. So we got some Greco here. Even got the Greco team from 12 on the wall here, in case you're wondering if you've never been to my studio. By the way, the two other guests, one's Jarrett Yalen, who his wife is an associate AD at the University of Minnesota. I went to high school with him.
Okay, awesome.
Financial planner, did some of that. And the other one was Chris Pendleton.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So
was he in town? He probably was in town, maybe for a PINnacle.
He was doing a home visit with
maybe Kirk Litt or something.
A couple years ago. So think Totino Grace.
Think Totino Grace. Oh, Lance Bennick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he was actually, he had just gotten the job at Arizona State.
Okay.
Parks here, because Totino is like a half a mile, if that.
Yeah.
Walk to the football game. It's like right before Halloween. It's snowing. And he was like coming from Wyoming to Arizona State. He had already reacclimated.
Yeah.
He's like, man, it's cold. And the Bennick's parents are sitting there going, well, we got a blanket. And
yeah, you're fine.
I'm just like, dude, this is Minnesota, man. Yeah, the land of the sun was not kind to him. So we got a lot busy off season for you. You know,
yes.
we've got some things to talk about. We got the senior level stuff. Greco now back involved in Final X. You know, Jared doesn't have to handle the freestyle side of things with the Storm anymore. You know, Dustin Schlater's the head freestyle coach there. A lot of things. I guess let's just start on your general thoughts about the state of. First, let's start with the Gophers. You know, their performance and what you saw out of them this year with Coach Eggum running the show.
Yeah, they look pretty good all year. You know, at nationals again, they had a good nationals where there was actually a couple guys that you feel for that could have made it through to be All-Americans, and ended up with 4 All-Americans, but could have easily been 6 or 7, even with Tommy, Russell, and Blyce, and they so close and wrestled their hearts out. You know, really their effort was outstanding throughout the year, and that's kind of what you're looking for. You know, I think there's still some good recruits coming in, and the future is bright. But they got some work to do to get back on to where they were. But that's any program. It's hard to stay on top, hard to stay in that top 3, top 4. But, we hope to try to help them get up there.
Yeah, well, what's it like to kind of see, the kids that have come through, part of that early PINnacle years, even probably maybe even before you were there, or actually, they're probably older now. They're probably gone. The pre-Paulson PINnacle boys are probably gone.
Yeah, Tommy was the first, he was in high school, but like an 8th grader, and now he's graduating, but he came through our first year when we were sharing a facility. He was in there. I think he was in 8th grade. So him and like Skylar Petrie was in our youth class still. he graduated now. But, then you have Mitchell McKee, who kind of started out in the program.
And he's still got
in our youth. Yep, he's still got a year left. And those guys coming through, there's a pretty good group coming through at the Gophers and a few other teams. But, yeah, it's awesome to watch them in college now and follow and see how they're doing. And there's so much coverage now everywhere. You can, TV, internet, you get to watch people from all over where, 10, 15 years ago, you couldn't see anything. You look for results in the newspapers. So it's awesome. I love to follow my guys.
And that's one thing that we've talked about in previous interviews over at PINnacle is you don't send your kids to a certain program. Every program's welcome. You can see it by all the flags of all the various colleges on the wall in there. But being a Gopher alum,
yes,
is it a little bit, once you're not in that coaching room and you're a spectator, you're at Williams, you're at the Pavilion, you're at the NCAA tournament, does it make you feel good that that your club kids have come through and now wrestling for the University of Minnesota?
Awesome. Yeah, it does. It's, it's awesome that I can sit in the stands at the Gopher meet, and I try to keep my mouth shut as much as possible. And
that's impossible.
It's impossible. But I try not to scream too much, but try to just cheer on. But it's awesome to watch. And, I was obviously a Gopher alum, so I, still believe maroon and gold. And for those guys to represent Minnesota is awesome.
It's a busy offseason. Now, Final X is including Greco this year. And, from a Greco standpoint, being you're a Greco guy, what's that mean to you? What do you think it means to the entire Greco program to be involved this year?
Well, I think it's a good thing. Matt had last year didn't want to. He wanted to see if he could get some of those freestyle guys into Greco, and it didn't really work. And so I think
he had the one.
Yeah.
The big one, but he was both styles anyway.
Yeah.
You can't say Kuhn's a freestyle.
Yeah, no, he's either still, So, and this year, Final X obviously worked out well last year. And so this year, Greco is in it. And, I'm sure freestyle will still be the focus because it's still what Americans follow the most. But, the Pat Smith Kamal Bay, I think, will be a show. It's such a contrast of style, so I think it'll be great for other people that haven't seen as much Greco to watch a match like that, where you have somebody that can throw from anywhere and you have a grinder that keeps great position and has phenomenal technique. So, I'm hoping some of those matches, and, there's some other guys. There's be some great matchups in Greco, and I think hopefully people get to watch those and pay attention and get Greco a little bit more visibility and see some of these kids that actually see these guys wrestling Greco and not just freestyle. And name-wise, it's a big deal for kids to see these names and get to know these names, because the more you know a guy, the easier it is to follow. You go to a dual meet where you don't know anybody, and it's really hard to follow. It's just like, who am I cheering for? Who are these guys? But if once their name starts to be developed and kids can start watching them, then it's easier for them to follow, whether it's internationally at tournaments overseas or whether that's at the Schultz or wherever it is.
You think it's easier here in Minnesota because the Storm does represent, every freestyle and Greco athlete in the state. You're wearing the Storm singlet. That's what it is. So when you're coming through wearing the Storm, you represent the entire state of Minnesota, freestyle or Greco or women. So it's probably a little easier for fans here in Minnesota to appreciate all three styles and know who to root for versus, hey, is that guy from Sunkist? Is he from, where's he? Did he go to the U or did he go to Iowa? You see Storm, you know where they're representing.
Yeah, and it's we've had a great tradition, obviously, of Olympians. I think since 1968 we've had Olympians, so
pretty good.
It's not bad. So and Greco is always in Minnesota is known as a Greco state, has been known as a Greco state, and we're trying to keep their tradition going. And I don't know if you've seen, just had practice this on Monday with about 15 of the younger kids, along with Pat Smith, getting Pat Smith ready. And I remember just sitting the kids down, the high school kids. There was like some 15 new guys, some 17 new guys that were coming up. And I was like, oh, let's watch Pat. And when I say high pace, this is what I mean. And them watching Pat and how he wrestles and how he trains, I think is a big deal. And that's kind of what we're trying to get those guys to believe in, the international styles and really love the international styles. So whether it's Greco, freestyle, or whatever, it was great to have those guys in the room and watching Pat.
what's one thing that the outside world, and maybe even the folks here in Minnesota, need to know that the relationship between a club like PINnacle and the Minnesota Storm's senior level athletes, national team members? I mean, where's the tie-in? Whether it be guys like Gable on the freestyle side or guys like Pat Smith on the Greco side.
Yeah, well, a lot of the guys coming through now, Gable was never a PINnacle guy, but a lot of the guys coming through now that are training, whether they're at the Gophers or not, were part of our program. So, especially on the Greco side, for me, I've always helped out the Storm whenever I can, and sometimes it's once a week, sometimes it's twice a week. Sometimes it's been more, but I'd like to try to get the PINnacle guys involved as well. Pat Smith actually helps coach, and a lot of the guys coming through have helped coach as well. And we used to have Kevin LaValle in, even when Mango was here. Guys coming through the Storm, we try to help out their careers as well by hiring them as coaches, just so they can make a little bit of a living while they're training. But a lot of those guys over at the U, whether it's McKee or Allers or whoever is coming through, they were former PINnacle guys. So it's fun to see those guys compete. Now U23 is coming up. We'll have a ton of guys there, and it'll be fun to watch them compete.
Now, what about the relationship between the University of Minnesota and the freestyle and Greco athletes there, and like you said, U23s, and how often is PINnacle used for training in that respect, especially since you guys have this beautiful new facility?
Yeah, it was.
Well, it's not new anymore. It's about a year old now.
Yeah, I think we're about a year and a half in now. It's not used as much as we used to. We used to have freestyle twice a week and Greco, 2 to 4 times a week at PINnacle. Now almost all the freestyle is done at the U of M, which
the new room is
their phenomenal. New room is phenomenal. They got 6 mats, plenty of space, and now that Jared's not running it, we have Dustin's running the Storm, so the freestyle is mainly done there. The Greco, though, still we have it over at PINnacle. Sometimes it's once a week we have it over there where we get guys in and I try to coach them during that time, and it's really great to be able to work with the Greco guys still.
A lot of development coming through, US. We got age group world championships. One of those that's coming up is the U15 world championship. And then we've also had name changes. So Fargo is no longer cadet and junior nationals. It is junior and U17, which is it's cadets. But, and now there's a
U16, actually.
U16, Fargo. Yeah, yes. U16, because internationally it's U17. It's the cadet age group is 17, depending on which country you're from. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. May or may not be a shot across the bow there. But now we've got a U15 Worlds, and we've got what used to be schoolboy is now U15. And as before we even get to how well, I guess, represented PINnacle is there, your daughter is a high-level gymnast and has been for a long time. What is your position on an age group world championship at that age?
Well, I think any international experience is awesome. To me, that's why we really pushed it this year. If you're 14, 15 years old, you're ready to compete. And to be able to go to Budapest, Hungary.
Great city, by the way. I love Budapest. Budapest.
Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah.
I think at that age, they're ready to compete. So it's going to be an awesome experience for the guys that made it. I think it's awesome. Like for me, it was awesome that I could train guys to try to make a world team at that age, that, you pick up the intensity, you kind of show what it will take. And, as I've always said, if you got a chance to make the world team, let's try to make a world team. And so I think it's a great thing. I don't know how well represented the other countries will be, because again, it's, some of the other countries don't have that much money. It's in Europe though, so it's not that hard for them to get to. So I'm hoping they get, 16 to 20 guys to compete. But, those guys are ready to compete at that age, and winning a world title at that age isn't the most important thing, but I think the opportunities I give you is tremendous. So
the opportunities to, the term jump levels is often attributed to wrestlers that are improving and making a significant jump in performance. making the jump between, you might see a cadet world champ never really pan out at the junior level. You might see, what's one thing that to keep in mind for these kids? Like, hey, don't, almost like, compete for world championship, but this isn't the end all be all. I mean, how are you using this as a teaching tool or a learning experience?
Well, I think it's still development right now at that age, even though, for this next month, those guys going to Worlds, we're training to be world champions. But it is still development, so you're still teaching them the right things that you're going to do, and you're still having them look. One of the great things actually about it is they're training to be a world champion, just like Jordan Burroughs is trained to be a world champion. In their mind, this is what I'm training to be. And they look at these senior level guys and, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to try to be a world champion. And I think, again, it really focuses on those international styles, gets them to like those styles. And I think development-wise, the coaches that they get to be around and the extra training they get to be around and the other athletes that are around. For me, my first world team, I was 15 and I was a cadet, and it changed my life. It changed my training. It changed the way I thought about things. Meeting new coaches and seeing how other guys trained, it changed my life. Including my teammates I had. It was Kerry Colott was on the team, and Mike Mena is a freestyle team. David Rogers, you might not remember him, but he was Texas. A high school phenom. He was unbelievable. But Billy Pearson,
I'm aware of him. I don't know him. Never saw him wrestle, but he's a name what people always talk about first from Texas. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
In the Slay, David Rogers. There was also Brad Knaus. In that era those are the first Texas heroes, guys. So yeah, David Rogers. When was the last time you had a David Rogers reference?
It was a long time ago, but he was unbelievable. And so just the guys on the team there were, up my level of intensity, seeing how Colott trained.
Wild man.
Yeah, and it was, but it changed my life really of what I wanted to do. So if these guys have that same opportunity, I'm gonna try to give it to them.
What about the relationships built? That's one thing I love about international trips, whether it be when I was with USA Wrestling, whether it be as part of the United World Wrestling announcing team and media team or whatever. It's the people you see. You start seeing them once, twice, 3 times a year. That it's like you get there, you feel like you've known them for years. Talk about the opportunity these kids have to leave the country, a lot of them for the first time, getting passports for the first time, going through TSA and all that fun stuff for the first time, and the relationships they're going to build as a result of this.
Yeah, and they're still, for me, again, it was these guys are still guys that I talk to when I see in the stands, whether it's at NCAAs, whether it's at the U.S. Open, or whether wherever it is, whether it's at the National Hall of Fame. These guys, and there's a lot of them, because if you continue on, there's a bunch of different teams, but they'll know these guys for life, and they'll remember them for life. Like, David Rogers. I mean, I haven't seen him for 15 years, but, I still remember him well. But
just 15?
Well, it's probably longer than that. How old am I now? God,
that would have been 15 years ago. Would have been 2004.
Yeah, so it might have been before that. Let's just go 15. I'm not trying to age myself here. Maybe 25.
Dude, I turned 40 in a couple months, and
I'm a little bit older than you. I'm a couple years. I got a couple years on you. But, so these guys will know these guys for the rest of their lives, and they'll remember this trip for the rest of their life. I mean, going overseas and competing at the World Championships when you're 14, you're never going to forget that. So that's what, for us as a club, it was like, we're training for this. This is what we're doing. We're going to go for this, and let's get some guys on this team. So, and that was one of the reasons is it could be a life changer.
You got Pat Smith challenging for the senior team. What do we got? Juniors, cadets are going on. They're going to be coming up in Akron.
Yep.
U23 is also going to go on in Akron, so we can't really speak on that right now. But this U15 team.
U15.
PINnacle wrestlers?
Four PINnacle wrestlers, yep. So, I mean, again, we put an emphasis on it. So, in Greco, Zach Silvis, who's a phenomenal Greco wrestler.
Where's he out of?
He's out of Park. It's a wrestling power of Park Cottage Grove. But no, he's a phenomenal Greco wrestler as far as his
Grove. I'm still working on my suburban geography.
So Park is, it's near IGH. It's out east. Amber Grove Heights.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm still, I still haven't assimilated
it's a little bit north of that, if I'm correct, kind of near Woodbury, East Ridge, over in that area.
East Ridge, that's a can of worms. Let's not go there.
Yeah, stay out of that one. But phenomenal athlete. He made it at 97 pounds. More phenomenal Greco-Roman wrestler. And then Gavin Nelson from Simley, who is a monster. He's about 170 pounds-ish. He goes to Simley, 8th grader, and he was a man amongst boys. But there were some big boys there that he had to beat to make
I was a 170-pound 8th grader. I wasn't like that kid.
No, he's.
Wrestling like school. If I didn't wrestle until I was a junior in high school, but if I'd been like that schoolboy heavyweight wrestling like the other fat kid.
Yeah.
No, if I'd have seen a kid like this, I'd been, oh crap.
Yes, he's big and he's
a
athletic
whole bag. He should be in 10th grade. No. It's not fair that kids are built like this. Steve.
I know, it's amazing how much bigger people are now, and his dad's a big guy too, so I think he could grow quite a bit. And we
need some genetic testing on this guy.
Well, the heavyweights in Minnesota for some reason he could be one in a few years. We'll see.
That was actually a suggestion. We had a listener come in, or actually chime in, and actually contributed to the network and said, "Hey, how about a series on the Minnesota heavyweights?" I'm like, well, yeah, the odds of me getting, Shelton and Brock are pretty slim. I could probably get Shelton better than I could Brock. I don't know if I can go to Saskatchewan or not, if he's still up there or not. But
yeah.
A lot of you've got Minnesota heavyweights. Kirk Fleet won a cadet world title, and so it's. For a little guy, you even appreciate that.
Oh yeah. No, it's awesome to see, and it's continuing. So hopefully it does have a few big guys coming up. But then Tyler Wells in freestyle, he was a smaller guy, so he's. I think it was 92 pounds, somewhere in there. Extremely fast, extremely talented. He's always been one of the best guys. His technique is phenomenal. He's been working hard, so I expect him to do very well at Worlds. And then on the women's side, we have Gigi Bragg. So 2 in Greco, 1 in men's.
Who is probably known more for her singing of the national anthem than she is her wrestling ability.
She's a world teamer now.
She is now. So world teamer. Maya Nelson, I believe, sang the anthem at an event. She's a junior world champion. So I think she sang it at the challenge tournament in Raleigh.
Yeah.
So I hear. And then Gigi's made, she's been all over Instagram and Twitter for singing the anthem. I think it was like cadet duels or junior duels a couple years ago, wearing a singlet.
Yeah.
And like Minnesota. All right. So cool. Tell us a little bit more about Gigi.
Gigi, she trains with PINnacle here and with the Anoka Club. She is small, competes a ton.
Anoka. Shocker.
Yeah. Anoka. Right? I mean, I don't know about international styles in Anoka, but it's a special thing.
Trying to think how many Anoka guys are. Actually, Hayeswinkle's up there. His dad is
Hayeswinkle. I don't know if we have any others up there. No. So, Deitcher, I think, was the last in 2008 to make a team, but we'll have some more coming up.
I wish I had a picture of Dan Chandler's afro in this office, because that would just make this a true Minnesota office.
Absolutely, with the stash as well. And she competes quite a bit. Her dad was just retired from the Army, so he traveled quite a bit. So she actually travels around and competes quite a bit around the country. Mostly in folk style, so I was glad to see her make a freestyle team. I think that should be her focus with the women colleges in freestyle, and I think that's the future. So hopefully we can get her a little bit more into freestyle, but look forward to her wrestling in the world. So
that's also a natural segue to our next topic is, Emily Shilson spent time at PINnacle right here and transferred to Mounds View for her senior year. Trisha Saunders.
Yes.
Colton Schultz won the Dave Schultz. Emily Shilson won the Tricia Saunders, the High School Excellence Award, which we will talk about at the Hall of Fame this weekend in Stillwater. But, Emily's got some world titles to her credit. She's going to Augsburg, which announced it was adding a women's wrestling program. In terms of women's wrestling here in Minnesota, not yet there are proposals out there for the MSHSL, which is kind of the bane of my existence, to be honest with you. But when it comes to, I'm going to mark that. I'm going to probably cut that out. No, I'll just leave that in. But when it comes to the women's wrestling, and now there's an opportunity for girls like Emily to go on and become high-level women's collegiate wrestlers. What's the Augsburg announcement mean for wrestling, not just in your club, but here in Minnesota?
Well, I think it's awesome, the growth of women's wrestling, and now that we have one in Minnesota, not just it's in Minneapolis. And
it's not out in Morris. I mean, there was, we can't forget Minnesota Morris, which was the first women's program in the country. And, Doug Reese started that with a men's and women's program. Financially, they axed them both, I want to say, at least this point, 15 years ago.
Yep.
Because that was where, Sally Roberts and Marcy Van Dusen, all of them, they came through Morris initially.
You got a good memory.
Yeah, well, they're my age, too, so I remember that. Well, there was a kid from Virginia actually went there for, I think, a semester.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we got to credit Minnesota Morris for being the first year, but it's Minneapolis. It's not Morris, Minnesota that's going to draw these. It's no disrespect to these smaller colleges like Jamestown, North Dakota, or Minneapolis.
Yeah.
That's kind of an easy sell because it's a great place to live. If you're going to deal with cold, why not here?
Yeah, and you already have great recruits coming in, and from around the area, along with Emily Gabby Skidmore from Wisconsin, she's a PINnacle girl as well, and Faith Tuttle from North St. Paul, but phenomenal wrestlers. And then Valerie Baker.
Vale Ray Baker, yeah.
Vale Ray, there we go. I called her by her wrong name a few times. So
I think she's probably
sorry about that.
A lot, yeah.
But, coming in from Pennsylvania, so they already have an awesome recruiting class. So, that, I think they're just going to be tougher, and they're going to be a force in women's wrestling. And for the future girls to be able to look up to someone like that. And Emily's kind of been the trailblazer for women's wrestling, in Minnesota. She was our only girl basically for our first 7 years, whereas luckily she had a brother in the program who was the same age, Tyler Shielson, same age as like the McKees, and
wrestles at Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken.
Now he's at Tennessee Chattanooga.
Oh, okay. He went to warmer climates.
Yes, but
followed Kyle Rochelle. I get it now. Makes sense.
Yes, and and it was close with the McKees and the Malders, and had a bunch of guys that were close to the family. So even though she was the only girl, she had a bunch of protectors around. But she was really a trailblazer of really Minnesota girls to me, just what she's accomplished and in Minnesota and how well she's done internationally and nationally. And for her to go to Augsburg, have a great wrestling facility, a great wrestling name. I mean, Augsburg, D3, they have been a power forever.
Even though they're Division III, they have national recognition.
Yes, absolutely.
Because there's probably the only two programs the generic D1 wrestling fan can name in Division III. It's whether or not they live next to one. They could probably, I live in Elizabethtown, so them, and then, Augsburg and Warburg. By the way, there is another Minnesotan on the wall. Her name's Allie Bernard.
Yes.
You can't forget her as a
Can't forget her, yes. And Natalie Rutt.
Natalie Rutt from New Prague, right?
New Prague. And so there were other girls, I think.
I'm catching on.
Yep. And just, I think women's wrestling is growing so much right now compared to even where it was 10 years ago. And these girls have just helped it explode. And, like I said, we had one the first 6-7 years, and now we might have 10 to 15 for next year. So it's still coming.
What do you ever foresee a girls-only session for PINnacle? Yeah,
we actually have thought about it before. It's, in our room, I want a good practice room. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have... It's hard to do a practice with Emily Shilson and a 9-year-old, right? No, literally, it's not... And nothing against a 9-year-old. It's like, that's why, we have 7 different sessions, right, of different groups of people. And so I'd love to have a woman's... Maybe a high school and a youth, but we need the numbers for it, too. With the amount of... our coaches and our room is used, it's used a lot. So you have to find a time, so you have to get the numbers to fit that time. And if I did, I'd try to, involve Emily now that she's staying around and use her as much as possible. But, I think for sure. And now we have them wrestling with the boys, which is fine. And it's been working out, so.
Going to move to a couple questions we got on Twitter because one thing I did is I tagged.
Before we go to the Twitter question, we have one more world teamer who he'd be mad if I didn't mention. Junior world teamer from Anoka, Tyler Ishins.
Okay.
So, before we went on, we were talking about world teams. So Tyler Ishins is an Anoka boy. So if I didn't mention him when we were talking about world teams, he might get mad.
That's right, because the juniors just fit. My schedule.
Boy,
that's on me. That's on me.
So the juniors are done, but he wrestled my nephew in the finals, Calvin Germanero, who was also from Anoka. God, it's crazy. But he made the junior Greco team, and now Kelvin and Peyton Robb will be going to the Pan Am championships, junior Pan Am championships. So those guys are also wrestling internationally. So before we move on to these Twitter questions,
Ishins, is it the same family that's at St. Cloud?
No, different family.
Okay,
See, you know what? They're like cousins, so it's not brothers or they're cousins.
When back where I'm from, there's 5 last names in the whole city. Yeah. So you see a Forrest, Freeman, Bunting, Holloway, or Firth, you're like, they're probably related. They may not be, but they are down the line. So. That's on me as I'm still learning about the Minnesota landscape here.
Yes.
Now, Twitter questions, because I threw this out there, and I immediately got a text from Jared Lawrence saying, hey, you tagged me instead of Brandon. Yes, because his Twitter handle is PINnacle Wrestling. PINnacle Wrestle. So that's why he gets tagged, is because it's the school name is in his handle. Now, if it was like J. Lawrence PINnacle, and you had maybe a generic school wrestling account, just a hint. Okay, so first one, I'm going to skip over that one. So let's see. Victor Gleva throws one out there. He goes, who's the best dodgeball player to ever come through PINnacle?
Well, Victor, he's trying to promote himself here, Victor. So Victor is probably the best dodgeball player we've ever had come through.
Is it because he's just he's smaller than everybody, so he's a smaller target? And
that would be Brandon Mavari is a guy that you can't hit. Okay. Impossible. I think my son is rising, trying to rise to Victor's ranks. He is a pretty good one. Brandon Mavari is a really good one because he turns sideways and you can't hit him. Victor, though, could catch behind his back and do a flip and throw the ball, and he's a phenomenal dodgeball player. Although, he's back in the room as a coach, and I think his skills have diminished a little bit. It might be because of his weight. I'm not sure.
Age also plays a role.
And his age, yes. He's only like 22, but I think he's aging already, and, his skills are diminishing a little bit. So, but he was phenomenal. I'll tell you, who our 2 worst players are. Emily Shilson and Greg Kirklitt are 2 worst dodgeball players we have ever had in our room. Neither one really liked the game, so it's, I don't know if I've seen Greg. He's a big target, too, and he doesn't dodge very well, doesn't throw very well.
Dip,
Emily actually...
dive, duck...
Dodge. You
no,
always have
5.
dodge
I missed
first.
one.
Well, 2 of them
dodge, duck, dip,
dive, dodge.
You could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball.
So, and Emily she actually is normally one of the last ones. She stands in the corner and waits, and nobody throws a ball at her.
She turns sideways, you can't see her.
Yeah.
She's a little thin.
Yes. But anyway.
No disrespect, Chad, by the way, because I know he listens. Yes. He's an avid listener to the program.
So that is interesting, yeah. Good job promoting yourself, Victor.
Yeah, good job there. All-American from Augsburg, by the way. So another one comes from, do we have to do Mac Ryder's question right now?
I'm not going to answer it really very well. But.
Well, it's editorial control. So the initial question is, who is the best assistant coach you've ever hired at PINnacle? He did spell it correctly with a capital P-I-N, so credit there for grammar. They must be currently coaching and not be named Jake, Pat, Victor, Owen, Hunter, Justin, James, or Reed.
So that only left one coach left, really, and that was Mac Ryder.
I believe he left out Jared Lawrence as well.
Oh, yeah, but we didn't really. Do we hire Jared Lawrence? So
because he started.
When you're a co-owner, co-director, and I don't know.
Does he cut himself a check?
We do. He is a salaried employee.
And
I believe I'm a salaried employee as well. So
it's a semantic distinction. So how about
Mac Ryder, though, has been with PINnacle from the start, and he's been very loyal to us. And, over the years, sometimes it's only been once a week on Sundays or whatever. But now, these last 2 years, this last year, Mac has come on a little bit more where he's almost there every day, along with Jake Short, which it's nice to have the Short family. If you don't know Minnesota wrestling history, but the Short family obviously has a huge wrestling history in Minnesota.
It's like what we go back with the Ishins thing. It's like, Short, how are they related? Oh, they're all from out,
Yeah, they're all the Shorts are related, all from Jim.
In Fargo, everybody's asking, like, okay, which Short kid is that? Whose dad is he?
Yeah, which one? Yes. So Jake is Willie's son, and he's with us now pretty much full-time, too, so that's awesome.
There's one coming through now that's at Simley, right? What's up?
Yep, Kayan.
Yeah.
And that's Wade Short's son.
See, I got that a lot last year.
Yep.
It's like you see Short, Minnesota, and then the question was, how do you pronounce his first name? So that was another.
I believe it's Kayan.
Yeah.
So it's we do have an awesome coaching staff. If you go through with Justin Laval is in quite a bit, and he'll be in more even in the summer.
Still got the man bun, or did he finally grow up?
I've told him to cut his hair many times. I can't control him, though. Now
he's an ugly girl with that man bun. I tell him that in Faro. Yeah, I'm saying that on the show. You want to, Matt, come over here to the studio. We'll talk about it.
And then some of the former guys we've had with, Owen Webster and James Berg in there. And
Webster's got good hair.
Well, better now. He used to have the hair down to the middle of his back a little bit, too. And
I retract my statement.
Yeah, we got Hunter Marco and those guys coming back. It's always great to have the guys in college come back, too, and try to support them a little bit, and they know our system, so it's fun for those guys to come back and have them in.
Did have one additional question, because Reed Johnson's Twitter account has the padlock on it, and I don't follow him, so I couldn't see the question. So thanks to Pat Smith for jumping in and asking, Reed wants to know who scored the phantom goal in young guys plus love the fight versus old guys in the soccer game yesterday.
These guys aren't very smart, so they don't even get to retort right. It's only me answering the question. So here's what happened. It was Storm soccer is a big deal.
Yeah, so, I know. I was there. I did it one time.
You've seen it.
It was bad.
So we're at PINnacle.
Actually, I was bad.
And we had the U15, U17 guys in to train to help Pat Smith get ready for Final X. And it was old guys versus young guys, so I was on the old guys team, of course. So the first 10 minutes, it's 7-0 old guys, and it got ugly. And I was like, okay, next 10 minutes, I'm switching sides. So switch sides. I'm on the young guys team. I got to coach them, right? These are my guys. I coach them, so I got to coach them how to play soccer now. So about a minute in, I steal the ball from Peyton Robb, pass it off to Eli. Eli nutmegs Kelvin Germanero, goes around Reed, passes off to Gavin Nelson, and Gavin Nelson bulldozes Pat Smith and scores a goal. 1-0. Our whole team comes back to the other side. Nothing. I was like, it's 1-0. They're like, no way. It's 7-1. I was like, hey, these are new teams, right? So
this seems to me to be the plot of Slapshot 2, which, by the way, is the worst hockey movie of all time.
The 7 minutes later, 8 minutes later, right, we're almost down. They start getting angry. Peyton Robb's throwing guys around. Pat Smith is bulldozing guys. You imagine Pat Smith on the wrestling mat. He's the same thing on the soccer. He just goes straight forward. They end up scoring a goal and somehow forgot that we scored. They're like, it's 1-0. I was like, it was just 1-0 us. They're like, no, it's 1-0. And they take away our goal somewhere. Fortunately for me, that I'm the coach and the official,
and the
scorekeeper, and I had
judge,
control.
Jury, and executioner.
Absolutely. So it was a 1-1. We played last goal wins, and nobody scored. I had to stop it. It got a little competitive.
You played criteria with soccer?
Well, no.
That might make soccer more exciting.
No. We said last goal wins, so we played another 8 to 9 minutes, and it was like, okay, we got to stop it. So it ended up in a tie, 1-1.
So last goal wins criteria.
No.
Okay,
the last goal after the 1-1.
I see what you're doing here. But, you want to make sure you don't lose.
They called it a phantom goal, but I have no idea what they're talking about because I saw our guys just run through in theirs and score that first goal. So it was Gavin Nelson, by the way. That's who scored.
And that's
U15 World Team member that plowed through Pat Smith to score.
Yeah.
So
just murders being committed by schoolboys against senior level athletes. Probably not the best ringing endorsement for train. No, anyway, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Guillotine Grapevine. Going to do a special interview with Brandon about his upcoming induction into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame as a distinguished member. That will be on the Hall of Fame Legends podcast. That is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network at MattTalkOnline.com. And as Jeff Beachy and our friends at the Guillotine say, it's a great time to be a Minnesota wrestling fan. Brandon, thanks for the time here on the Guillotine Grapevine.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
The Guillotine has been covering amateur wrestling in Minnesota since 1971. Our mission is to report and promote amateur wrestling at all levels, from youth and high school wrestling to college and international level wrestling. Turn to the Guillotine for feature articles, interviews, news, photos, rankings, results, opens, schedules, camps, records, and more. The Guillotine is the source for Minnesota individual and team high school ratings. Subscribe to the Guillotine for $20 a year at theguillotine.com/subscribe.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.